So, Anne, we were just talking about how you had been diagnosed with lupus nephritis at the age of 21, but you were managing it and not really letting it affect your daily life. So, when was it that things began to change for you health-wise?
So towards the end of the year, when I was studying for my final exam and writing my thesis, I remember sitting outside because it was a beautiful day, revising and studying. I went home afterwards, said goodbye to friends, went home, and I slept for about 12 hours. And in the morning, I was so fatigued that I couldn't even open my eyes. It was a kind of fatigue that I'd never felt before. I can't really explain it either now. I was so tired that I couldn't move my muscles. I couldn't open my eyes, and it was so difficult for me to muster the energy and the will to even open my eyelids and to get out of bed.
Wow, that must have been quite challenging, especially because you were embarking on this exciting career in fashion design. And I can imagine that's a pretty competitive area. So the fatigue that you were experiencing at that time living with kidney disease, did it sideline your career at all?
So I'm very stubborn as a person. I'm also very positive, I'd like to think. So when I first started in fashion PR and marketing, I didn't really tell anyone. And like with lots of diseases and chronic illnesses and kidney disease, you can look perfectly healthy on the outside. So people don't realize that you are, in quotes, sick. So I tried to not let it affect my work at all.
What about sharing what was going on with your health at that time? Were there people in your inner circle that you were able to reach out for support?
My family and friends knew, of course, and I leaned on them, like many patients do, for support.
Yes.
But the fashion industry is, like you said, it's competitive. And back then, and perhaps even now, some HR practices aren't great. Some places don't even have HR. So for me, I was trying to protect my career and my future.
And were you taking any medications at this point?
So it's drug therapy or chemotherapy. So you're on some really heavy medication. And when I was diagnosed it was July, it's 13 years ago now, 2008, I think. 2008? Yes, 2008, 2009, that's when I graduated. In July, the specialist and the nephrologist and the rheumatologist started me on some really heavy biologic medication. So a really common one for kidney disease is mycophenolate.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and that, as I'm sure many patients know, has many side effects. And it's a pretty strong medication as well. And they started me on prednisone as well, a really high dose of steroids. And steroids, I will say, is one of the worst and one of the best medications. It's so good at just giving your body a kickstart, but my God, the side effects of that can be absolutely awful. So, for example, one of the side effects that as a young woman that I was worried about working in the fashion industry was the steroid weight gain. And it didn't happen until, I would say, about 6 to 7 years after I started taking steroids that really, really kicked in. But by that time, I was moving to Canada and eating well and really healthy, so that wasn't really an issue for me. And then they also started me on, I think, 3 or 4 other medications as well, just to help with suppressing the immune system, supporting the kidneys, preventing any more kidney damage as well.
So by now you've established yourself in the fashion industry in the UK, and 2016 comes along and you make a milestone move from the UK to Toronto. So what happened in your life that precipitated that big move?
I met my now husband, and he is actually from the Yukon. He was born and raised in Whitehorse, and we met through a mutual friend who went to university together. And so things got serious. We were doing long distance, and we decided, well, let's move together. And I decided to move to Canada because at the time politically the UK was going through Brexit. It was going through some political turmoil,
Yeah.
And Canada just seemed like a more of a positive place and just better prospects. And for me, I could work remotely as well.
So how did this big move impact your life and your health in particular?
Moving, like you said, to Canada and Toronto in 2016, it really made me think about my future, about my chronic illness and my journey as I get older. Because as you get older, your disease doesn't get better. You know, with age, it gets worse.
Yes.
And so it really started to sink in. And I started to basically become a much healthier person. So I reduced my work hours. I then also started eating better. Not that I was eating terribly, but in the fashion industry, sometimes you don't really get to eat because you're running around all the time. There's pressures on how you look and the size that you are. So being away from that, physically being in Canada, really helped my mental, emotional, and physical wellness.
So this was a positive experience for you?
Yes, absolutely. And then I had time to do things that I loved, like Pilates, like yoga. I could make delicious, fresh food. I had time to cook, which is another thing that I love. I started seeing a personal trainer and I started working out. So physically, I was in really great shape. And I started doing things like meditation to help my anxiety that I still had from the fashion industry in London.
Hey everyone! Thanks for stopping by Kidney Plugged In. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And while you're at it, don't kidney around. Hit that subscribe button right now. It helps us out a ton. If you want to check out the next part in the series, click here. If you'd like to watch other inspiring and heartwarming patient stories, well then slide on over here. Cheers, and we'll see you next time on Kidney Plugged In.